This is the Amazfit Balance. It's got a 1.5-inch AMOLED touch-enabled display. It's got 1500 nits of brightness. It's got internal storage for music. It's even got mapping and breadcrumb navigation, along with dual-band GNSS. And guess what? Comes in at $229. I've been wearing the Amazfit Balance for a couple of weeks now. Day in, day out, sleeping with it, going for runs with it, traveling with it. And I gotta say a lot of things about this watch. Some good and some bad. But I'll kind of spoil the whole thing and say that this is probably the best value smartwatch that Amazfit has ever made. So if you don't know who Amazfit is, they've been around for a while and you may have not heard their name before. And no, they're not related to Amazon at all. They're actually owned by a company called Zepp. Amazfit makes a whole bunch of different products, from earbuds to scales and body fat things and devices like this, smartwatches. And their smartwatches range from prices like the Amazfit Bip, that's like 50 or 60 bucks, all the way up to the Amazfit Falcon, that's like $600. So the Amazfit Balance lands itself on the lower side of things at $229, but it's got a lot of features that make it even more compelling than those more expensive options. In this video today, we're gonna dive through a whole bunch of different topics about this watch, from the hardware to the software to the GPS accuracy and the heart rate accuracy, and hopefully by the end, I can help you make a purchasing decision if you're interested in this device, because it seems like a lot of people are. People have been messaging me on Instagram and emailing me, and I finally got one here to test and review, so let's do that now. The first topic of conversation here is options and pricing, and the Amazfit Balance comes in at $229. Like I said before, that's here in the USA, and that price may vary wherever you are in the world. This watch comes in two different colors. You can get sunset gray, that's more of a raw metal look or a silver look, and then there's midnight, which is the one I have here, that's all black. And when it comes to the size and weight on the Amazfit Balance, it comes in at 46 millimeters in diameter, and it's about 10.6 millimeters thick, which is actually pretty thin. And when it comes to weight, the Balance is also very light. This watch comes in at just 52 grams on my scale with the included band attached. And if you look at all those numbers, you can see that it's nearly identical to the size and weight of something like this Garmin Forerunner 965 here. If you look at them side by side, they pretty much have the same footprint, they weigh almost the same amount, and they're just about the same thickness as well. The Garmin is a little bit thicker though. And for reference, if you're interested, I have 16.5 centimeter circumference wrists, and this is what the Balance looks like on my particular wrist. With the size and weight out of the way, let's take a closer look at the hardware. So on the left side of the watch, you can see there's nothing here except for a little opening, which actually has a speaker and microphone inside, which we'll talk about in a little bit. In flipping the watch to the other side here, we do have two buttons. There's a top button here, which is also a digital crown that you can roll with your finger. And on the bottom here, there's a single side button as well. That's pretty flush with the surface of the watch. And when we flip the watch over, you'll notice a couple of things. First of all, the sensor in the middle here, which obviously is the optical heart rate sensor, but on board there is an SpO2 sensor, which picks up your blood oxygen saturation, and an internal temperature sensor to pick up the temperature of your skin. And next to that, you'll also notice the included bands are industry standard quick release, so you can pop these off with your fingernail and replace them very easily from anything from Amazon or even from a brand like Garmin. Hey there, quick interruption. If you're enjoying this video so far and you're finding it helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you went down and gave me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss more videos like this in the future, okay? Back to the video. When it comes to charging the Amazfit Balance, it comes with this USB puck style charger, which is USB type A to a proprietary cradle on the end here. This is a magnetic charger, so once you put it on the watch, it just kind of sticks and stays there. Now, unfortunately, this is not the same charger as a lot of other Amazfit watches. Before this, they're using a standard charger for every watch, so you could buy replacements very easily. This one's totally different. This may be their new standard or something like that, but time will tell. And when it comes to build quality on this watch, it is 5 atmospheres waterproof, which means you can dive in a pool with it, even go in open water swimming or something like that. And on top of that, it does have some metal to it. So around the bezel here is all aluminum, I believe. And on the back here is plastic, but it all feels pretty darn solid. There's nothing like cheap feeling about this watch. Now that we've talked about the exterior of the watch, let's get to the good stuff, the display. This watch has an impressive display. It's 1.5 inches, which is massive. It's AMOLED, it's extremely bright at 1500 nits, and it's got a really high resolution at 480 by 480. The screen to body ratio on this watch is 73%, which is much higher than a lot of the competition out there, and it looks really nice on the wrist. In terms of durability with the glass on this display, on the spec sheet, it just says it's tempered glass. So I don't know how durable it actually is. It has not scratched yet. I've been trail running and hiking and things like that with this watch, and it hasn't broken or scratched at all. Using the touchscreen on this watch is an absolute joy. It is crazy responsive. There is no lag when you're swiping around the user interface. I can scroll through things and dive into menus and go to the app list and scroll around. And it is a really smooth experience. Everything just works really well. And like I said, this display is extremely bright. So as you can see here, I'm in automatic mode. And if I scroll that all the way up the top there and then go back to my watch face, you can see it's actually blowing out my camera lens because it's so bright. It's hard to capture on film here. And it's basically like the same kind of brightness we're getting out of the Apple Watch Ultra, which is really impressive. And it's actually a bit more impressive than something like my Garmin Forerunner 965 here. When it comes to connectivity on the Amazfit Balance, it does have Bluetooth on board, obviously, to pair with your phone, but it also has Wi-Fi as well. From what I understand though, the Wi-Fi is only used for over-the-air firmware updates. I haven't seen another use for that, but it is there, so there's that. The Bluetooth, however, is used to pair with your phone, but on top of that, you can also pair heart rate sensors, power meters, and other external sensors over Bluetooth to this watch. Keep in mind though, there is no ANT Plus connectivity, only heart rate or power meters over Bluetooth. Another use for that Bluetooth connection is for earbuds, because this watch does have internal music storage where you can store MP3s and play them back to earbuds that are paired directly with the watch and not need your phone on you to hear music, which is pretty cool. That music capability is pretty limited. It's basically a simplified MP3 player. You will need raw MP3 files that you can upload to the watch. It doesn't work with Spotify or Amazon Music or Apple Music or anything like that. When it comes to that music app, you don't need to use internal storage if you don't want to. It can also control the music on your phone from your watch, so you don't need to get it out of your backpack or whatever to skip a track. The user interface on the Amazfit Balance has been updated compared to previous Amazfit models, and it's now running Zepp OS 3.0. This operating system is proprietary to Amazfit, but it does give me a vibe like a Google Wear OS device, because if you swipe down from the top, it's got very similar icons. And it also gives me vibes of Apple, because if you press the app menu here, you can have this in a list like this, but you can also have the same kind of grid of icons that Apple has. It's very similar if you have the grid view on. In terms of smartwatch features, the Amazfit Balance can pick up notifications from your phone. So if I swipe up from the bottom of the screen, you'll see I have a message from Matt Legrand. Shout out Matt Legrand. And when you get back to your watch face, the watch face is fully customizable. I really like this one because it's got a ton of data on it. But if you want something different, you can tap and hold, and there's a whole bunch already pre-installed that you can choose from. And if you don't like these, there's also an app store in the Zepp app where you can download additional watch faces, and there's a ton to choose from there. Speaking of the app store within Zepp Health has been updated quite a bit, where previously, a couple of years ago, there's only a few apps on there, but now there's actually a lot of apps on there that are both free and paid to do a variety of things. There's some for navigation and turn-by-turn directions. There's some for music. There's some that'll utilize your camera or GoPro to take pictures from your watch. There's a lot in that little app store now. It's not as full-fledged as something like the iOS app store, but it's pretty cool for a fitness watch of this nature. When it comes to the pre-installed apps on the Amazfit Balance, we can dive into that here. And as you can see, there's already a lot to choose from. So all the way at the top, there's Readiness, which we will talk about in a minute. There's heart rate to see your heart rate metrics. There's one-tap measurement to get an idea of your HRV and health at a given time of day. There's the workout app, which we'll talk about in a minute. There's Zepp Coach, which is kind of an automated coaching system. There's a body composition that works with their smart scales. Then you got workout history, workout status. These are your training tools, like your training load for the past 7 days and your estimated VO2 max. There's the daily activity widget, which you can dive into to get an idea of your activity for the day with your steps and calories burned and fat burn and things like that. Below that is the stress widget. Then we have the sleep widget. And if we dive into that, that'll give you your sleep from the previous night before, along with all of your sleep stages and a sleep score. There's also a really nice weather widget that gives you the current weather along with an extended forecast, calendar on board, which will sync with your Apple or Google Calendar if you want that. And below that, we have settings, the sunrise and sunset, a compass, a barometer, menstrual tracking, breathing exercises, a thermometer, a stopwatch, a timer, a Find My Phone feature, a to-do list, a voice memo feature, a camera remote, and so much more. I know I just dumped a lot on you there, but if I went through each one of these individually, this video would be an hour long. The cool thing though is that there is a camera remote already pre-installed on the watch, which you can dive into here. And this will allow you to take pictures on your phone remotely from your watch. So if you're posing for a group photo, you can tap this button and take a picture remotely while it's out on a tripod. And that feature does work with Android and iOS. I have tested it and I was actually surprised by that. And like I said before, the Amazfit Balance does have a speaker and microphone on board, and what you're hearing right now is a recording internal to the watch using the voice memo app, so you can hear what it sounds like. What do you think? On top of making phone calls, the Amazfit Balance is also compatible with Amazon Alexa to use your smart assistant. Unfortunately, I don't use Alexa, so I couldn't test that out. It does not work with Siri, which is kind of a bummer, and that's what I use, so take that for what it's worth. When it comes to smartwatch features, there's one more thing I was hoping to test out that's advertised on the website, and that's Zepp Pay. So Zepp Pay is basically a payment platform for Zepp Health or Amazfit, where you can add your credit card information to the watch and pay for stuff using NFC in real time. But unfortunately, I can't get that to work. I don't see the app anywhere. I can't see a way to add my credit card info, so maybe it's too early, maybe it's coming down the road, I don't know, but at this time, there's no Zepp Pay yet. Let's move on to wellness features. So like I said before, when I dive through the app list, there's a lot of wellness tools on the Amazfit Balance, but one that I found very interesting is Readiness. So on the left side is the Amazfit Balance, and on the right is my Garmin Forerunner 965. And if I scroll down here, I can dive into something called Training Readiness. Now, Training Readiness and Readiness on the Balance look to be pretty similar. And as you can see, both are in this top right kind of 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock area in terms of my readiness to let me know how ready I am to take on more training and how recovered I am from the previous day of training. Now on my Garmin here on the right, I can scroll down in this widget and get some more information in all the factors that play a role in my readiness score. Now if we take a look at the Amazfit Balance and scroll down on its readiness score, I can scroll down and I can also get factors that play a role into the score, like my physical recovery, my mental recovery, and my sleep resting heart rate, along with my sleep HRV. And on top of that, my breathing quality and skin temperature plays a role in this metric as well, and I can dive into these metrics and see even more information. For example, my skin temperature has not changed, no plus or minus here, it's 0, which is optimal. And if I scroll even further down in this widget, it'll tell me even more information, like your body temperature changes a little bit throughout the day and night and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole bunch of explanation on why these metrics matter. When it comes to the Amazfit Ready score, in terms of accuracy, I don't have a real scientific way of checking how accurate this is. All I can tell you is what I feel like compared to what it tells me. I do feel like they're a little bit generous here when it comes to the readiness score. Like it does tell me I'm more ready than I actually feel. For example, if I had a really bad night of sleep and I didn't feel that great, sometimes the readiness score says I'm ready and ready to go, like 80 or 90%, which doesn't make sense to me. But for the most part, throughout the testing that I've done with this, it does seem to be pretty similar to the Garmin's training readiness score, which I found kind of interesting. I'm not a doctor or scientist. I have no way of testing the accuracy of this. All I can say that it's kind of similar to Garmin's training readiness. So if you're looking for something like that on a budget, this might be an option. And when it comes to sleep accuracy on the Amazfit Balance, I have similar feelings towards that like I do with the readiness score, where on most days it does seem to line up with my Garmin, but on some days it seems way off. And again, I have no scientific way to test that either. When it comes to training tools for optimizing your running or cycling, the Amazfit Balance has you covered there. There's a 7-day training load, there's a race predictor, there's estimated VO2 max, and that's all in a watch that's $229, which is pretty solid. Now, one thing when it comes to all those metrics is, again, accuracy is a little bit suspect. For example, my VO2 max on the Amazfit Balance comes in at like 48, while on my Garmin, on my Coros, on a Suunto I have, those all tell me I have around a VO2 max of a 55. So there's a pretty big difference there. In my experience, pretty much all of Amazfit's devices are not very close when it comes to VO2 max accuracy. And I'll link a video up here to sort of explain that. Now, when it comes to activity profiles, that's where Amazfit shines because they have a ton of activity profiles. If I push the button on the bottom right here, that'll drop me directly into the workout app. And from here, I can scroll using the digital crown or touching the screen. And they have a ton of apps in here for activities. There are 150 different activity profiles available on this watch. You've got everything from outdoor running and cycling to swimming and walking, and on top of that, there's also multi-sport mode for triathlon. They also have activity profiles for team sports. You've got tennis and soccer and basketball and rugby. There's a lot going on here. I'm not gonna cover every activity profile, but for the most part, they're all here. Just know that they're really just like copy and paste profiles. There's not a whole bunch of extra data you get by using any specific profile, but it is a good way to categorize your activities. And when it comes to the workout app, when you're actually in an activity, there are even more tools to optimize your training. For example, I can dive into the assistant here, and this will let me set up workout goals and workout alerts. So if I have a desired pace I want to stick to or a heart rate zone, I can do that here. If I go into the training menu here, there's also interval training available as well. From within the workout app, you can also swipe right, and then you can control your music right there, or you can swipe left to end your activity. activity. When it comes to mapping and navigation on the Amazfit Balance, it also has you covered there, which is kind of interesting. It does have breadcrumb navigation, which means it's not really a map. It's not going to show you roads and trails and waterways and all of the graphics on the screen. It'll basically just show you a squiggly line of your trail or the desired course that you should be on and let you know if you're off course or not. Breadcrumb navigation is really powerful and it's great to have that on this watch. However, it is kind of tough to use because you do need another service like download a GPX file from Strava or build it on Strava, download it from there, upload it to the watch using the app, and then you can use it on the watch. The navigation feature on the Amazfit Balance is pretty basic, but at least it's there, and that's a step up compared to a lot of the competition. And now I want to talk about battery life, because again, it's also pretty impressive on the Amazfit Balance. This watch will last for about 14 days in typical use in smartwatch mode. That's not doing activities, that's just daily use, checking your time, getting notifications, things like that. And I thought that 14 days was pretty impressive when you compare it to something like the Apple Watch Ultra, which gets about 3 days of use. Yes, these are very different watches, but this has a big bright AMOLED display, so does the Apple Watch, and we're getting 2 weeks here. Pretty solid. Now when it comes to GPS battery life on the Amazfit Balance, it's also pretty interesting because in accuracy mode, which is the highest accuracy setting, using dual frequency or multiband mode, you'll get 26 hours of use with this watch. On top of that, there's also an automatic GPS mode, which will toggle single band and multiband to get the most battery life and preserve accuracy depending on your situation. And in that mode, you can get up to 47 hours of use. And if you dive into power save GPS mode, which uses single band GPS to maximize battery life, you'll get up to 52 hours of use. With all that said, what about accuracy? Well, let's talk about that now. GPS accuracy or GNSS accuracy. This watch, like I said, has a dual frequency GPS chip inside, which is actually GNSS, not GPS, but we'll use those interchangeably here. Now that means you've got two frequencies. There's the L1 and L5 frequency, which can talk simultaneously and do a lot of magic. I'm not going to try to explain that all here, but it's kind of the gold standard when it comes to GPS watches. For the most part, the Amazfit Balance looked pretty solid, which I was surprised about because I've had other Amazfit watches in the past that didn't do so well. This one did pretty good. For most road runs in good conditions, I was getting pretty solid GPS data. I was getting pretty solid tracks that matched up with my other test devices pretty favorably. That being said, none of these tracks were absolutely pristine or perfect. There were issues here and there with like jitters or drifting. And in terms of overall distance recorded at the end of activities, I'll put a couple of examples on the screen here so you can see what that looks like. That's all to say, the Amazfit Balance in my testing so far in the couple of weeks I've been using it has been pretty good. I mean, not amazing, not perfect, but pretty good when it comes to GPS accuracy. With GPS accuracy out of the way, let's dive into heart rate accuracy from the optical sensor on the back of the watch. So again, when it comes to heart rate performance on the Amazfit Balance, I was kind of surprised because to be honest, just about every Amazfit that I've tested on this channel has not performed well. They're usually kind of all over the place when it comes to the heart rate sensor on these watches. For whatever reason, the Amazfit Balance has done pretty decent. Again, not perfect, there are some issues here and there. It seems like what it all boils down to is the heart rate sensor design, and maybe that's why I'm getting increased accuracy, because if you look at these other watches, this is the Amazfit T-Rex 2, and this is the Amazfit Cheetah Pro, it's got a different heart rate sensor. It's a different design, so hopefully they've improved it. That's what I'm seeing in my testing so far. Keep in mind that even though I'm getting decent accuracy from this heart rate sensor, doesn't mean that you will, and you should take all of this with a giant grain of salt, because heart rate sensors really come down to the wrist, the skin color, what color your hair is on your skin, how much hair you have, if you have tattoos or not, your body fat percentage. There's a lot of variables that play a role in accuracy. All I can do here is share my experience, and my experience so far is actually pretty decent. With all of that said, it's time for final thoughts and conclusions. And before we get to what I think about it, I want to talk about some comparisons. So the Amazfit Balance comes in at $229. And in that price range, there's a lot of competition. You have things like the Coros Pace 3, which is more of a sport watch and less of a smartwatch. Then there's the Apple Watch SE, which is similar in price, but more of a smartwatch and not quite as much of a sport watch. So this is a unique offering. I think for $229, this is a pretty incredible value. The display, the look of the watch, it's a very modern vibe. I like the way it feels in my hand. I like the way the user interface works. It all works pretty seamlessly. And if you look at other offerings in this price range, for example, like the Garmin Forerunner 55, This watch for $30 more is a much more impressive smartwatch. The real question here, and what it all boils down to, is the ecosystem in the brand. Do you really want to adopt an Amazfit device? Do you want to invest in the Zepp ecosystem, in the Zepp app? That's really for you to decide. They've gotten better. The app has gotten a lot better. It syncs with Strava. I mean, you can get a lot done with the app. It's just different. If you're in the Garmin or Coros and Polar or Suunto ecosystem, making that leap will be a hard pill to swallow. I do think for me, if I was interested in spending $229 on more of a fitness-focused watch or a running watch, I'd probably go for the Coros Pace 3, because it's an insane value for what you're getting there. But again, it's really not a smartwatch. It doesn't have an OLED display. It doesn't have all the features in the App Store and all the things that this can do. It's very different. For a smartwatch, this is more of an Apple Watch alternative, and if you're an Android user, again, this might be worth looking at. But if you are new to smartwatches, you're looking for more of a smartwatch and less of a fitness tool, this might be worth looking at. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the brand and whether or not you're willing to invest in this ecosystem. But if you're open-minded and you're willing to try it, this might be the way to go. And now's the point in the video where I want to hear from you. Are you interested in the Amazfit Balance or not? Are you gonna go with a Garmin or a Coros or a Suunto, or take your chance with this device? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. Okay, we've reached the end of this video, and those are my thoughts on the Amazfit Balance. If you found this video fun or interesting or educational, please consider going down and hitting that thumbs up button and subscribing to my channel so you don't miss more videos like this in the future. That would be great. And if you're planning on picking up the Amazfit Balance or the Apple Watch or any other watch I talked about in this video, check out the links in the description down below because they do help support this channel and they cost nothing extra to you. And while you're down there, you might as well check out the links over to my podcast and my Instagram and all the things I do. That would be fun too. That's all I've got for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.